I tracked my macros for 1,000 days, but was it worth it? My colleague Lauren Graham, who also happens to be a Precision Nutrition Level 1 certified nutrition coach, has been tracking her macros for the past 1,000 days. Since she had such a great experience, I decided to track my macros as well, and I was pleasantly surprised at what I discovered. In this video, I'm going to talk about both Lauren and I's experiences, and whether you're just starting out or you're looking to improve your approach, I'm going to give you our honest advice and tips here that are rooted in our real-life challenges and successes. Now, I've always been a pretty active person, working out at least 3 days a week. I usually mix HIIT cardio with weight training, and I thought that I ate pretty healthy, mostly eating whole foods, fresh fruits and veggies, lean protein. In terms of mindset though, I felt guilty if I had things like chips or cookies or any other food that I didn't label as clean or healthy. And I found myself going overboard on those foods when I did have them because I figured I'd already screwed up my healthy eating plan and I might as well enjoy them while I had the chance. And then just start fresh the next day or like the next Monday. Then after talking to Lauren and seeing how she was really able to change her body composition in a positive way, like visible six-pack abs, while still eating those quote-unquote unhealthy foods like chips and cookies, I was like, how are you doing it? And she told me about her macro journey and about the if it fits your macros movement. So I decided to do the same. I started by using MyFitnessPal initially because of course it's been around forever and I was already comfortable with it. But for over a year now, I've been using Macro Factor. I chose this app because firstly, it is 50% less expensive than MyFitnessPal and has far greater functionality and accuracy. Macro Factor is really customizable. It consistently adapts to your metabolism, and Macro Factor has an extensive verified food database that really just encourages more accurate food logging entries compared with all the other apps that I've tested. If you want to learn more about Macro Factor, I've linked my full review in the description, and if you decide to purchase it, you can get an additional week free on your free trial if you use the code FEASTGOOD when you check out. So what did I hope to achieve when tracking my macros? My goals when I first started were to drop 2 to 4% body fat, build muscle and strength, and lose 5 pounds in a healthy way. I'm pleased to report that by the end of my initial 12-week program with my coach, I did achieve my stated goals. I got visibly leaner, I gained strength at the gym, and I lost the 5 pounds. But those outcome goals paled in comparison to what I learned in the process. Before tracking macros, I only really had a vague sense of calories. I knew that too many calories was bad, but I also had some misunderstandings about certain foods the diet and fitness industry perpetuated. Certain diets like the Whole30 diet made it seem like you could achieve and maintain an ideal body weight if you just stuck to a narrow list of allowed foods, which I found is not necessarily true. You can overeat and gain weight on Whole30 foods in the same way as non-Whole30 foods. On the other hand, if you eat entirely hyper-palatable processed foods within your calorie target, maybe you're going to achieve your weight loss goals, but you're less likely to feel full, you're less likely to feel and perform your best. Ultimately, I came to embrace the 80-20 rule with regards to my nutrition so that I can maintain some balance. I'd aim for roughly 80% of my calories to come from minimally processed whole foods each day, and 20% to come from more highly processed fun foods. On a 2,000 calorie diet, this is about 400 calories, which is enough for a small bag of chips and a cookie or 2 each day. This realization did something really drastic to my mindset. Once I realized that the foods that I had previously labeled as bad didn't automatically mean that I was going to gain weight overnight, my overeating episodes decreased entirely. Eating 1 cookie no longer meant that I was going to eat 10 cookies, heck, crush them up on top of an ice cream sundae and add extra whipped cream. I recorded the cookie, and then I noticed that it provided some of my carbs and fat for the day, similar to what an apple and peanut butter would do. I discovered a secret that allowed me to enjoy my favorite foods without feeling restricted. This revelation about food freedom and making choices really changed how I felt about dieting. I noticed that certain food combinations provided the same total macronutrients as others, which opened up a lot of freedom of choice. Like I mentioned, a cookie versus an apple and peanut butter. I noticed that the apple with peanut butter kept me feeling full longer than the cookie, and it was a better choice before a workout. But I also noticed that there were some times where I didn't want to feel full, making the more calorie-dense option a better choice. Or of course, the joy and satisfaction from eating the cookie made it worth it. Feeling in control of my choices and the ability to decide what factors were more important to me at the moment was incredibly freeing. I mean, life and living a healthy lifestyle doesn't have to be all or nothing, because sometimes it's more important to me to enjoy time with family and friends by sharing rich food with them, which sometimes means I'm gonna hit the dessert table at the holiday dinner, or I'm gonna go out for pizza with my friends, and other times I'll come home and maybe I'll make a lower calorie choice like a homemade pizza with light cheese, or I'll make my favorite high protein baked goods, because I know that I'm gonna be able to eat more at other times of the day, such as around my training session. Something thing that my colleague Lauren expressed about her macro journey is that she felt that sometimes she would be stressed or anxious when she went to a restaurant where she didn't really know how the foods were being prepared. And this made her feel like she was becoming too fixated on her health and fitness. And sometimes she would miss out on going to a restaurant entirely so that she could feel more in control of her choices. So how can you not feel like you need to cook all of your meals at home and have the confidence that the food you're going to eat when you're out at a restaurant is going to fit your daily macros? Well, the solution for her was experimenting with ordering certain things and just making best guess estimates and then just moving on. Now, I think for some people who like to be perfectly accurate, obviously this is going to make you nervous, but in order to enjoy life and keep your sanity, it's really a good practice. It just goes to show you that macro tracking can be adopted in various ways in social settings, and you don't and shouldn't forego them entirely, because connecting with friends and family in person is a really important part of our overall health, and it shouldn't be shunned for the sake of hitting your macros. You might be wondering if tracking macros for 1,000 days is a good goal, because when I say it that way, 1,000 days, that could understandably sound pretty intense. But when I first started, I never intended to track my macros for 1,000 days. But the insights I gained from the commitment are not what you think. Recently, I've seen a trend where people talk about making a 1,000-day commitment. Now, this is a pretty lofty goal, and it's great, but it can also be really overwhelming, and then it causes people to quit when they have that all-or-nothing mentality. 3 months is a great time frame to try a few things and learn what works and what doesn't. But you can't get to 3 months without first getting to 3 weeks. You can't get to 3 weeks without first getting to 3 days. For some people, 3 days in a row is too daunting when there are other pressures and priorities. I mean, life is crazy. The first real key is to start easier than you think you need so that you can stack wins. For example, you can just commit to tracking just 1 meal per day, or tracking an entire day but only 3 days out of the week, the ones where you have the most time and energy to devote to tracking. Like any new skill, tracking takes a little while to just learn and even longer to get good at. But also, like other skills, the more you do it, the easier it gets until it becomes almost autopilot. So would I recommend tracking macros to everyone? Actually, no, I wouldn't. Just because long-term macro tracking was and still is right for me does not necessarily mean it's going to be right for everyone. In many ways, it depends on personality and preference. For me, tracking macros usually frees up mental space because as soon as I log my food, I don't have to worry about it or think about it anymore. For example, if I eat a cookie, or 3. I don't spend my day worrying about it. I just log it. I know how much it has contributed to my daily carbs and fats. These are macronutrients that I need to function optimally. It just might mean that I make slightly lower carb or lower fat choices later in the day. For other people, tracking macros creates this huge mental burden and they feel guilty when they have to record a food choice that they don't think is optimal. Maybe they're going to choose not to track. And since they're already not tracking, have all the foods that they don't want to record in their food log or tracking app. This is not healthy approach to nutrition. And if macro tracking drives this approach, then it's not the right choice for them. When I first started, I did struggle to hit my macros, and what I wish that I did differently was try to understand why. So if you're struggling with this, there are a few things that you can do. Some advice that my colleague Lauren has is to ask yourself if you're planning your meals properly and if your kitchen's stocked with ingredients to hit your targets. If it is, maybe are you eating out too often or feeling swayed by snacks? If you know that you want to eat the homemade treats that your coworker always brings into the office on Friday, then you can plan for that instead of trying to avoid eating it. That's the beauty of macro tracking to me. I mean, no foods are off the table, literally and figuratively. You can just plan the appropriate portion and fit the rest of your day around it. And once you have your food prep and planning on point, assess if your targets are too aggressive. If you're trying to lose a specific amount of weight, maybe you're making your targets too low and that makes it too challenging to not overeat. Instead, you should pay attention to your biofeedback. Things like hunger, appetite, cravings, your energy levels, and then adjust your targets slightly to make them easier to hit, which is going to lead to more confidence and ultimately more success. Lastly, she says to ask yourself, are these macros helping me make measurable progress towards my stated goals? The only way to know this is to have clearly defined goals and one or more ways to measure progress towards those goals. One thing that I probably could have done better earlier in my macro tracking journey was to measure the outputs of the macro tracking process more meticulously. I spent a lot of time and energy measuring the inputs, like my carbs, my fats, my proteins, and I should have been more carefully measuring things like my regular weigh-ins, ideally daily, things like circumference measurements, regular logs of my sleep, both the quantity and the quality, and my performance at the gym. Now, of course, this amount of tracking can be overwhelming for some people, and it could lead to burnout, frustration. This depends on your stated goals and your own personal idea of balance. So, after listening to all of this, are you going to try long-term macro tracking? Let me know down in the comments. And if you're looking to start day 1 of tracking your macros, I recommend that you watch my video where I give 5 tips on how to do it without getting obsessed, which I linked for you below. Thanks for watching.